All right, everybody, welcome to another Sharewise webinar. Today we're joined by Mark. He's the CEO at FBR. And today we're going to be doing more of a questionnaire and interview. So firstly, I was hoping, Mark, one, you could introduce yourself, give us a bit of information about who you are and how long you've been at the company, that sort of thing. And then obviously an introduction on FBR for those that are not aware.
Yeah. Hi, Luke. Thanks for having us here today. My name's Mark Pivac. I'm the current CEO at FBR. I've been in that role just for 2 months and working to transform FBR. And I've actually been involved in the Hadrian X project and what was FBR for about 20 years. I've been the CEO. I'm the original inventor of the technology and the founder of the company. So I've been involved all the way through from when we were a private company and our very initial patent applications through to when we did a reverse takeover. And since then, we've been listed on the ASX since 2015. We've spent about over $200 million developing the tech, which is now very well developed. And we built 32 houses or dwellings in Australia and another 10 in Florida. So we've pretty much proven out that the tech is there and ready to commercialise. And my job now is to start monetising our extensive IP suite and really transform FBR into the company that it deserves to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've got a couple of questions lined up. I was hoping to ask a few questions, just specific or even general questions as well, just to get a bit of information about where you are moving forward and what your plans are. So I did have the first question was, obviously you've just announced a deal with Samsung Heavy Industries, right? Can you outline the key terms of that deal?
Yeah, so Samsung, I'll give a little bit of history on that so people understand what's going on. Our core technology at FBR is dynamic stabilisation, and what that enables is a long boom to really accurately place objects. You know, we're currently working out to 32 metres distance. And what it means is that now opens up the possibility of robotics for very large applications, which haven't been either possible or practical before, both inside and outside. So Samsung Heavy Industries are a big shipbuilder in Korea, one of the biggest in the world. They employ about 25,000 people at the Gyeonggi shipyard. They've already got a lot of automation in there, and they're looking to automate a lot more of their process to free up their workers to produce even more ships. You know, they've got a labour constraint like many places in the world, so they're really looking towards automation. They approached us about 18 months ago with a really strong interest in DST. They saw what our long boom stabilisation technology can do and saw that could really help them automate some parts of their process, which they haven't been able to automate. So that led to an MOU some time ago where we announced, you know, that we were working on this and that, you know, we've been up to Korea to see what they do, and they've been down to Australia to FBR's facilities and seen how DST works. And we've just recently signed an engineering services agreement with them. And although it's for a fairly small monetary value, being $150,000, what we have to do with that is build a test rig for a small part of the automation system, test that and write a report. And that's a key part of the automation system. It's not related to our DST, but it is something that will need to happen in the overall system. And once that's proven out, it kind of clears the way for us to work on the entire system, which will be, you know, a much bigger project and involve automation systems, probably multiples of them. That's not contemplated in the engineering service agreement, but what is how we have to establish a working relationship and work out how we're going to bring this to commercialisation in the longer term, both for Samsung and then eventually other shipbuilders as well. So it's a small financial consideration at the moment, but we really hope that will lead into something very substantial in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Mark, obviously you guys have got that payment of $150,000, right? And that's going to be a development of commercialisation business models with obviously Samsung Heavy Industries. Now, You've also referenced potential subsequent phases. What just give us a bit of information about what these phases will look like moving forward.
Yeah, so the subsequent phases, yet to be defined, but that's what part of the work we're doing now is working out what those next phases will be. And once that's been worked out, we'll announce to the market. But you can appreciate that, they're not playing around here. They actually want an automation solution. And, we're planning out how we're going to deliver that, which is going to need machines and software and, special developments, ongoing development. We're leveraging a lot of the DST and long boom and delivery technology that we've already got. And that's why they're getting us to do that. So those additional phases, will be things like design a prototype, build a prototype, construct it, test it here in Australia, test it up in Korea, and then go into production. It's kind of a natural sequence of events. Those, as I said, are yet to be defined in detail, but that's one of the things which we're working on now and working out how we're going to commercialise it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, interesting. So you've also recently announced that you've got a proposed $7.8 million deal with a Northern Territory-based builder, Habitat. Now,
Yeah.
can you give us any information or outline the key terms of this deal and why it does represent such major growth for you guys?
Yeah, look, it's a pretty simple deal and it's outlined in the MOU. Habitat are a Northern Territory-based builder who build a few hundred homes a year. They have a lot of ongoing work up there. The building industry is going really, really well in the Northern Territory. The government has put in a $50,000 first homeowners grant, which has really stimulated demand. And then the defence industries are, expanding barracks up there and building a lot of defence infrastructure and defence housing and that sort of thing. So consequently, the masonry contractors in Darwin are really busy, and they want to deliver, this pipeline of work that they've got, and they really see that, a Hadrian robot is a great way to do that. So contractually, it will turn into, or hopefully turn into, a very simple sale. That's what's outlined in the MOU. There's some conditions which need to be met. They need to organise finance and we need to pass a factory acceptance test. We've passed those tests with other machines in the past. So, we're pretty confident we'll do all of that. So yeah, we're really excited to be working with Habitat. They're a very innovative builder, very keen to embrace the technology. And of course, this is revenue transformative for FBR. The kind of machines which we're talking about, we've got some already built. We've got some others, partly built. We haven't specified exactly which machine it will be that will go up there, but suffice to say that we don't have to build one and we don't have to buy all of the parts to do it. So this will be quite cash flow beneficial to FBR doing this. And of course, we look forward to ongoing relationships. And interestingly, that MOU has led to a lot of other inbound interest from other parties, both here in Australia and overseas, who are really interested in the purchase model. Previously, we thought that the only way to get Hadrians into the market would be through wall as a service, so that, builders can engage a subcontractor in the way they normally engage with bricklaying subcontractors. And we thought that we would have to operate and, deliver that wall as a service. But it turns out that builders are actually pretty interested in owning and operating Hadrians, or builders and masonry contractors, so that they have really good control over their own costs.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as you mentioned, there's enough demand up there to have your product involved with these building companies. I guess, how does that look? I mean, you've got an obvious tradie shortage up in the Northern Territory with these defence infrastructure projects as well as housing demand. How do you think, obviously, your Hadrian X product will help meet or overcome this supply issue in regards to infrastructure and housing?
Yeah, look, in general terms, we're about 10 times as productive as humans, when it comes to laying structures. Obviously the time frame depends on the specific design and exactly what we have to do. but we have built house designs in a day, which is absolutely transformative, where, manual contractors, take it typically weeks to even longer, if they're available. And really up in the Northern Territory, the big issue is that, everything is so busy. They can handle the workload, but, the masons are working really hard to do that. And, they're going to have to keep that pace up for a long period of time. And really the addition of the Hadrian is just going to enable them to do more work and deliver more houses, which are really needed up there. And look, that's not just isolated to Darwin. As we know, we're in a national housing crisis, particularly in Western Australia, for example. There's a massive underbuild, and there's a long lead time on getting houses built. Hadrian can take a month or two out of that construction process. But more importantly, if a builder properly embraces this kind of automation technology, because of the accuracy that you get with the robotically constructed walls, you can start to do a lot of other processes in parallel. So while the walls are being built, or even before the walls are being built, you can be quite comfortable knowing that any other components that you build in advance are going to fit into the house. So that will enable the house to become more of a parallel construction task rather than a serial construction task. And that's what will really lead to builders getting a really good saving once they fully embrace that technology. And look, in the long term, we see that Hadrian is just the first stage of, sophisticated automation coming to the construction site. What the DST enables is, precision placement of pretty much any kind of building product, onto the building site. So we see a future for a lot of other automation of other tasks which happen in a house build. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And just focusing in on this integration with Habitat, how will that integration work essentially? Does the so-called operator have to upskill in any way, or do they have to be like a robotics expert? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, look, sure, there's a training process. We've trained quite a few operators over the years for various Hadrians, and we're forever improving the operator interface on Hadrian, so that, the very early ones needed engineers to operate them. And now we've got, tradesmen and plant operators and process operators, who've come out of, say, the mining industry or the construction industry, in other fields. Even bricklayers, are capable of learning how to operate Hadrians. Of course, you've got to be digitally savvy, but, most people are these days. Everybody knows how computers work these days. And really, it's very much a gamified kind of operating environment. If you imagine, building in Minecraft, that's, not too dissimilar to what we're doing. So it's really an opportunity for the construction industry to digitalise itself and attract new trades. One of the big issues is, people entering the workforce are, they're not that interested in taking on demanding jobs, like bricklaying, which is, a lot of heavy lifting and, working out in the sun all day and a lot of physical work. And those guys are really skilled at what they do. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely fantastic guys and, have a really skilled trade. But they've had a real tough time, attracting the number of brick and block layers that are needed. And we see that, operating Hadrian machines is a pathway for, bricklayers who want to get off the tools, but, still stay in the industry. They can upskill themselves to learn how to operate a Hadrian, or, we can attract younger guys, who probably otherwise wouldn't be interested in becoming bricklayers, can still get into the construction industry and lay bricks, with the Hadrian.
Yeah, absolutely. And it might be early stages now, but I'm personally curious, is there any specific or additional ticket that you need in order to operate your product?
No, well, it's a very new industry.
Yeah.
We imagine that eventually, we have an internal qualification, so we do a training course, and then there's a whole bunch of competency, that we ensure that our operators are, competent to actually operate the machines efficiently and safely. So we have our own internal qualification. I imagine that eventually, in a similar way to the way you need a ticket to operate a forklift or, drive a crane or something like that, operate heavy machinery, there'll become an industry specific qualification. But, it's the dawn of a new industry, and we've taken that sort of certification role on ourselves. I think we're doing a good job of it. And I guess it'll be up to the industry, to eventually do it. But I imagine that's a few years away.
Yeah, absolutely. No dramas. Now, I do have a few questions ready for people that attended today, but just so we're not repeating ourselves, you had a presentation that you wanted to share. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, I'm going to just show a short video, runs for a couple of minutes, and then after that, that video will get people familiar with what we've done recently and give you an idea of how Hadrian works. And then I've got a quick presentation just to run through the key points. It does sort of cover off on some of those items that we've already discussed. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into some questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll just share my screen and get the video going.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we do that now in case that does answer a fair few questions that we've already got here.
Yeah, so that was the video, Luke. Would you like me to go straight into the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. How's that?
Yeah, that looks perfect.
Okay, so here's our corporate presentation. I'm going to run through it pretty quick. I can email it to anybody who's interested in getting a PDF version of it. So this here is one of the builds we did in Florida, which was shown in a little bit more detail in that building, in the video, sorry. Typical ASX disclaimer. I think everybody's seen those. So my role as CEO is to deliver some shareholder value, and really there's three big areas there: clarify the business, sort out the capital requirements of FBR, and engage with our investors, and digging into those a little bit deeper and clarifying the business, work out the Hadrian systems, production and sales. And with that, we have H4 undergoing commissioning activities, which is expected early in the second quarter of this year and the first quarter of the next financial year. H5 is about 50% built. We're expecting that to be completed next year. We have an MOU in place with Habitat for the sale of a Hadrian X for $7.8 million. So delivering on that and turning that into a contract is obviously a pretty important part of my job. We have discussions with builders in Perth and Florida, both for wall as a service and machine sales, and rolling out adjacent applications for DST and the long boom technology, such as shipbuilding, as we've talked about with the SHI work. Roofing installation is another adjacent application we've had a lot of interest in, particularly from Europe, where they're quite concerned about safety of workers on roofs. Welding and refractory relining in the steel industry, where they use a lot of bricks across about 1,000 steel mills around the world. We've got an imminent launch of a new product coming up, and there'll be more news coming out on that. And winning work. And look, the phase 1 agreement with Samsung Heavy Industries is the first, part of that which has turned into an actual contract. On the capital requirements, a big focus when I first came in as CEO was to restructure our operations and reduce our annual burn rate from 36 million a year down to about 10 to 12 million a year. And as part of that, we've rationalised our premises from 3 down to 1 and reduced our workforce from the order of 105 down to about 25 key personnel. Importantly, we've kept our capabilities. So we've kept, really key people. We've kept all of our manufacturing assets and our larger facility, which we can manufacture Hadrians and do work for the likes of Samsung and so on. And we've also maintained our portfolio of 400 IP rights across 41 patent families, which is, really FBR's core business asset. With regards to investors, obviously we'd like to keep our current ones, re-engage past ones and introduce new ones. That's why I'm on the roadshow doing things like webinars and that sort of thing. I've been back and forth to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and around Perth quite a bit. We've introduced Investor Hub to, give us another platform for good communication with shareholders and really just trying to improve our engagement with the equity market. We've talked a little about Samsung Heavy Industries. Here's a photo of their Geoji shipyard, where they employ about 25,000 people and build 70 ships a year. Absolute massive operation, already a lot of automation there, and they really want to automate and use DST to do that. So we've talked about that little development, so I won't go into that in much more detail. And slide here on the Habitat machine supply. So its initial purchase will lead to an initial purchase order for a Hadrian X at $7.8 million, which will, have a deposit payment and the balance, after the factory acceptance test. We'll also be supplying operating and maintenance training and, remote support and so on. And we've discussed about Habitat's ongoing pipeline of work up in Darwin, which is really exciting. Here's a little slide showing an overview of Hadrian X. I think everybody's probably got a pretty good idea of what it's about and how it works from the video. We have a 32-metre boom which can reach out. We can build up to 3 stories high, and we can handle bricks and blocks up to 600 millimetres by 400 by 300, which is a lot of bricks. It's every time we're positioning that, we're building quite a good chunk of wall, which enables us to build a house in a day. This slide here covers the US opportunity and, basically summarises one of the reasons that we're so interested in the US. You can see the US total house build there is nearly 1.5 million houses a year. And, people come back and say, well, a lot of those are timber construction, and that's exactly right. But in the southern states, circled there, you know, Texas, across to Alabama, Louisiana, and especially in Florida, the Carolinas and Georgia, you know, it's already a big masonry market there, and getting more so as these more extreme weather events are occurring there more frequently. You know, the hurricane building codes in Florida basically lead to the most economical construction there being masonry. And, you know, there's a big internal immigration from the US from the northern states into the southern states, and quite an underbuild, and, you know, good demand there. So we see really good tailwinds over there, and we'd like to take advantage of those. This is a bit of a summary of the demonstration homes, which we saw previously in the video. And a bit of an information page, all of our socials and so on there. And in the appendices at the back here, we're just highlighting some of the different products which we've worked with. These here are Wienerberger Porotherms. That's a house we built in Western Australia using a European brick, basically to show that, you know, Hadrian could be used in Europe, and we think that's another good market for it. Bit of a summary as to why to use Hadrian X. It's the world's most advanced end-to-end autonomous robotic construction solution, in that you feed in raw materials and you get a structure out at the other end. We've got very efficient mobilisation and demobilisation and utilisation. Our core deliverables really are speed, accuracy, safety, and waste reduction. And when you deliver those four things to a builder, you get a cost reduction. So, you know, really key important things that builders should be really interested in. And that's, you know, why the likes of Habitat are very interested. We deliver significant efficiencies over traditional building methods, and that can follow on not just in the brick and block work, but enabling parallel manufacture due to the accurate walls which are built. And it addresses a key component of the global construction labour shortage. And of course, we're compliant with building codes in Australia and the US. And in areas which allow it, you know, there's the capability to operate Hadrian 24/7. It can operate in day or night conditions, and even in light rain. You know, we can operate in pretty substantial wind. And, you know, we were building a house in Florida, you know, as a hurricane was about to roll in, and, you know, the weather conditions just got crazy and we had to get off the site. You know, we only did that because there was a film crew who had come across from Texas to film us. But, you know, we got half a house built in half a day that we could actually be out there on site. You know, there's a lot of reasons to automate construction: labour constraints, financial volatility, widening deficit of masons and bricklayers in key markets, housing crises all over the world, and construction is a significant risk contributor to health, safety, and the environment. You know, it's one of those dull, dirty, or dangerous jobs, you know, which leads to repetitive strain injuries and, you know, material handling and, you know, height risk and all that sort of thing. So Hadrian X offers a key towards full digitalisation, provides builders with certainty on timing, delivers a faster, safer, and more accurate structure, drastically reduces waste generation because we know exactly how many bricks and blocks will be used in the walls, and, you know, we only need to take those to site, and we have very low breakage and wastage through the Hadrian machine, and we're able to work 24/7. We initially launched with the Wall as a Service commercial model, which fits in very well with the existing construction ecosystem, and we're still looking at doing that in markets where it makes sense to do that. But we're also open to builders or masonry contractors, you know, purchasing Hadrians and completing their own work. We have quite a good sustainability and construction approach to things. You know, we're pretty good on the health and safety side. You know, we remove a lot of manual labour and heavy manual handling, and there's less people required at the work site for shorter periods of time, and all of that contributes, you know, to lower emissions. You know, even just the number of driving trips to a building site is greatly reduced when you use a Hadrian, you know, by not having guys driving there every day. So, you know, lower carbon emissions and all that sort of thing. These are some of the ESG development goals. And there's adjacent opportunities. So DST, as I said before, enables accurate placement of pretty much any kind of object over a big distance. So now we're able to do robotics at a scale much bigger than what is typically done in factories. And some of those adjacent applications are things like shipbuilding, welding, roofing, and the steel industry actually uses millions of bricks because they line lots of different things with refractory bricks, refractory meaning heat resistant, and those bricks don't last very long. You know, they're continually replacing these things. In a lot of processes, they only last 1 or 2 days. So it's just a never-ending task with teams of bricklayers relining things like steel ladles, which, you know, carry steel in steel mills. And we've been approached by a number of different mills, material suppliers and steel producers to try and come up with a solution to automate their industry. We've got some concepts there, and that's something which is in development. We're just trying to work out how we can actually commercialise that. So I'll stop sharing that and hand it back to you, Luke.
No, that was unreal, Mark. Thanks so much for that. What I'll do now, just for the last 15 minutes, I've got a few questions lined up from people that have joined the webinar, as well as some people that have put questions to us before the webinar. So I think I'll just answer a couple of these first. Now, the first one there was just in regards to progress with SHI, right? It sort of just says, what will their payment model be? The percentage of profit? Is it going to be a one-time sale? And if the next phase, which is due to be completed in 5 months, is successful, what would be your plan after that?
Yeah, so SHI's payment arrangement for the this current phase of work, the 150,000 is 90,000 to be paid within 14 days of the contract signing. So that's basically due this weekend. And, you know, we're expecting that payment to come in. And then 10% at the end when we hand over the deliverables, which is, you know, the report on the test results. The monetisation path for the long-term work is yet to be determined. And that, you know, could be any one of or a combination of things like licensing technology, building machines, some kind of royalty, you know, annual fee or something like that. And that's what we'll be discussing with them and working out. And when that's been worked out in a bit more detail, we'll share those outcomes with the market.
Yep, absolutely. Now, has FBR made preparations to apply for the Western Australian Government's $50 million Housing Innovation Fund, which was announced in the recent WA budget, right? And will that obviously be open for applicants in the second half of this financial year? Next financial year. Has that been in consideration at all?
Yeah, look, we've met with the relevant government departments such as JETSI and, you know, the Ministry for Housing. As far as I'm aware, they haven't actually called for applications yet. And as we understand it, you know, those applications will be called for perhaps later this year. We know they do want to move, but, you know, we've got to understand that, you know, the government has a lot of rules and things to comply with. So I imagine it'll take them some time. Of course, we'll be ready to apply if and when that happens, you know, and if the grants are suitable for us. We're also engaging with a number of builders who do work, you know, building social housing and developments for the government. And the West Australian government has recently tendered for quite a few social housing things. And I do know that some of those builders have included Hadrian X as a potential solution. So, you know, we haven't actually won work there, but we're in the running for it, which is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now moving on to a bit more of a financial standpoint, what is your plan to stay solvent until obviously revenue starts flowing in?
Yeah, so look, as an ASX listed company, we're cognizant of our various cash flow needs, and we manage that carefully. We've got 5 days left in this financial year, so I don't want to preempt anything that will be coming out with our annual reports. Suffice to say that we're managing it, and we're confident of moving forwards with FBR advancing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just off the back of that, I had a question here in the webinar. What strategies does FBR currently have in place to work with capital partners in the US? This seems to be the best market for Hadrian, and what is the HO3 currently doing?
Yeah, so HO3 is currently in the US. We have a business development person over in the US, discussing with all manner of business matters over there, ranging from shell contractors through to builders, large and small, various organisations which are interested in Hadrian X and FBR, in various ways, either operating wall as a service or purchasing Hadrians or doing demonstration programs over there, or potentially investing into FBR. And of course, like all things, we're open to proposals, and we consider those when they come along, and we're also actively seeking them.
Yep, yep, absolutely. I've got a lot of questions, Mark, asking about a bit of information in regards to an update on the new product, and if you've got a bit of a timeline around that.
Yeah, so look, we'll be releasing information, when it's ready to be released. We've got some pretty exciting developments in adjacent opportunities, but of course, until it's material or until we choose to actually launch those products, I can't be firm on dates, can't give any guidance on that. But let's just say that we're pretty close to it.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Now, there was one more there that stated the wedges didn't seem apparent in the Australian builds, at least from what we could see as shareholders, yet were used in SAT and all builds in the US. Were they always present in the builds in Australia, or was it a slab or brick rectification issue that caused the requirements in the US?
Yeah, look, it depends a lot on slab quality and block rectification quality. As we build, we quality control things as the building goes up, and sometimes we need to use what's called a bridge block, which has a gap in it to go over some obstacle which might be a little bit too high. Or if things are not running square, we can square them up with wedges. So it's just a standard piece of the building process. If the slab's of good quality and the blocks are well rectified, and there's no debris on the side or that sort of thing, then the requirements can be minimal to zero. There's not a huge amount of them, but we're not trying to hide anything. That's why they've been seen in the video. It's not really a big issue.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is something I'm also interested in as well. You mentioned that originally you were leaning towards more of a wall as a service, right? And then you realize that you can expand that I guess demand into different avenues. When it comes to just selling straight to the builder, right? Your product. Once that becomes, I guess, into fruition, and you have, let's say, 10 or 15 builders that want your product, how long would it actually take to build or construct the Hadrian?
Yeah, so our facility could be expanded in the current facility. Its production capacity could be increased to probably around 30 to 50 machines a year. Obviously, we're producing a lot less than that. We've produced a small number of them, and every one we build, we get better at, and they're becoming more and more productionized, so that those can be, produced in a quicker fashion. The other significant thing is that the next generation Hadrian X's are a very modular construction, so it's quite possible to subcontract out individual modules, to different providers. At the moment, we have a global supply chain of component suppliers, but there's no reason that we couldn't expand that to modules or even entire Hadrians if and when the quantities become enough. But you've really got to have some worthwhile quantities for contractors to be A, interested, and B, economical, and C, producing a good quality. One of the issues we had with the very first Hadrians we produced, H1 and H2, is we built them using a lot of subcontractors, and even just getting things like paint colours to match was quite problematic. Even though everybody was using the same paint, they were applied in different paint booths, and you'd end up with different finishes, or somebody had mixed something a bit different, and you end up with a machine that's 50 shades of grey. And they're just nightmares to control. So that's one of the reasons that we brought a lot of stuff in house, was to get really good quality control over our Hadrians, and that's significantly noticeable. That Hadrian 3 and 4 are much better built machines than 1 and 2. And we're really looking forward to producing machines in the long term. We can do that in Australia at the pricing levels we're talking about. It's economical to produce in Australia with the exchange rate where it is now at 0.65 compared to the US dollar. We're amazingly competitive in Australia, and even allowing for tariffs and so on to import into the US, we're still pretty competitive there. And of course, we also access our supply chain through Asia and so on. So, we buy a lot of components sourced through, the likes of Korea and Taiwan and China, as well as Europe and the US, and, even some from Israel. Don't be concerned about the Israel stuff. We're not sole sourced there. It's just that they happen to produce some pretty good stuff there, pretty high tech. So we bring in the best components from around the world, from the most economical sources that produce the quality and technology that we need, and we'll be able to grow and expand as required, whether that's in-house or through using subcontractors and the global supply chain that we've already got established.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think we've got time for one more question, and please correct me if you've already answered this, but what unit or model what are you guys going to be selling to Habitat? What was it, the H4, or are you going to do a complete new build for them?
Oh, look, it's H3 and H4 are essentially the same model of machine. It's what we call the next generation Hadrian. They are definitely getting a next generation Hadrian. They're not getting H1 or H2. Exactly which one it'll be, we haven't specified that. I know which one it'll be, and it'll be one of the ones which is already built. So we're not building a new one for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And in regards to, let's say that obviously you've got a few builders that want to purchase one of the Hadrians there. When it comes to the training, will that also encompass maintenance and fixing of the Hadrian?
Yeah, absolutely. We want our Hadrian operators to be as independent as possible. Obviously, we'll be supporting them well, and we can log in remotely, and diagnose any kind of issues. We've had engineers in Australia log into our machine in the US and diagnose various issues and see how things are running. So we've got all of that technology and ability to support a Hadrian remotely really well worked out. Hopefully it'll be a lot easier to support them in Darwin than we've already shown we can in Florida, and we're really looking forward to that. But yes, in terms of training, it'll be all encompassing, from daily operations through to routine maintenance and component replacement and all that sort of thing, with remote support available for when that's not available, and of course, physical support if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries, Mark. Well, thanks a lot for your time. Just while I've got everyone still in the webinar, what we'll do is this has all been recorded for those that weren't able to attend, as well as I might grab that deck off yourself, Mark, and I'll send that to a lot of the attendees there so that they can reference that as well. But thanks everyone for coming. I hope you really enjoyed that and got a bit more information about FBR. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, Luke.